Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning to talk about cybersecurity threats and the best practices for mitigating risk. A few housekeeping items to note is that one, we will have this whole webinar recorded, and we'll send it out after we're done, so you will have a copy of that to reference. So no need to take notes, just sit back, relax, have a cup of coffee or a glass of water if you're on the East Coast and it's almost lunchtime, and really enjoy the panelists. A few more items. There is a question function in the webinar bar. If you have questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. We're happy to interject those questions throughout the webinar. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists today. So today we have Erica Diaz-Joseph, who joined IOA, or Insurance of America, on November 2022 as an accomplished professional with over 6 years of focused experience in cyber and privacy liability insurance. Erica has served as a cyber claims adjuster and underwriter for small business, middle market, and corporate account sectors, showcasing her extensive knowledge of cybersecurity and privacy risk and controls. Her expertise encompasses cyber, media, technology, E&O, and miscellaneous professional liability insurance products. And then we have Jeff Heath, who is the managing partner and outsourced risk manager at Insurance Office of America, which is the fourth largest privately held insurance agency in the nation. Jeff specializes in risk transfer, risk financing, and risk management, and makes a substantial impact on the bottom line for his clients. Jeff focuses on processes and on a total cost of risk and building a custom insurance program backed by IOA's exclusive risk management process, which is called the Risk Score. Jeff provides a full team approach to implement the risk score processes and reduce his clients' total cost of risk. Managing risk is a long-term plan, and Jeff's team is here to stay ahead of the emerging trends and manage the entire process for his team. And then we have Dr. Faisal Khader, who has 27 years in the field of engineering, computer science, and information sciences. He is with Technuf, and he's an industry leader covering large-scale product development for complex service delivery for demanding federal and commercial customers. He serves as faculty at the University of Maryland Graduate School of Engineering, teaching cybersecurity, data science, and AI. He leads the overall cybersecurity posture for a number of large federal agencies, state and local governments, as well as commercial organizations. I want to thank all of these esteemed panelists for joining us today. It's really an honor to be able to ask you some really cool questions. I cannot profess to be an expert in this subject matter, and so I was doing a little research just to say, what are we talking about on this webinar? And in the context of our webinar, what is cybersecurity? And what are the attendees interested in? And I thought, I heard a speaker say that really cybersecurity is an ongoing, ever-evolving, complex business challenge that we're attempting to solve with many things, with products, with processes, and with people practices, right? We need to train our folks to be mindful about the risks of cybersecurity. So, one of the questions that we're asking are, what are the common threats that we're seeing today with phishing attacks and ransomware attacks? So I thought I'd start with Dr. Faisal and have him share some of his thoughts about this matter.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much, everyone. It's a great opportunity to be able to talk to you about a very critical topic. Actually, we've been constantly challenged by phishing attacks and the ransomware attacks in the real world. I mean, every single company is being hit every single day, actually. So what can we do to protect us? So the very first thing is that we as organizations, we think that we're fully protected. We have been doing all kinds of precautions and securing the network, setting up the firewall and everything. But the first and foremost that we should do is to do a vulnerability assessment or a security assessment of your organization. And that requires some work going into the network and see how everything is set up. And then depending on the findings, we can find some of the opportunities to make sure that it's fully secured. So phishing attacks, I mean, not all of us are technical, right? So we get emails every day like, hey, you've got an email as an impersonated email from the CFO or CEO that, hey, you need to release this invoice to this vendor and this is the bank account information, please do that. And we get so alarmed that, hey, it's coming from the C-level exec, so I need to act on it immediately. So what happens is the accounting team, when they receive that email, without looking critically that it's not actually the CEO or CFO sending that email, immediately process that payment, and then boom, your payment is gone to another bank. And then later on, the vendor comes in that, hey, I missed the payment for this month. What happened to that? And we say, hey, we did make the payment. And then we dig in, and then we find out that it went to the wrong place. So again, so this is a very critical threat. And the same way, the ransomware is something that the attackers can come into your machine and encrypt the critical files. Like there's some backdoors, there's some phishing way of getting into the system, and then they encrypt the files so that you don't have access to that. And they ask for some ransom. They ask for money to give you the decryption key, and then they pretty much keep you hostage. And then you have no choice but to give the money and get that decrypted and access your files back. So these are the two major things that's happening. The way we should always think about is to be aware of this, and there are certain ways technically that you can protect. So some of the things that you should look at is where the email is coming from, where the phishing link is coming into your email and asking you to click on it. I mean, as soon as you click it, you ended up downloading a malware, ransomware application or phishing like kind of a program. So these are the things that you should look into, and you should always report to your IT department when you are not sure about certain links, certain email, and so on.
So, Erica, is these types of issues that Dr. Faisal are talking about, is that social engineering? And is that part of an additional part of an insurance policy on social engineering and your cybersecurity policy?
Yeah, absolutely. So cyber insurance policies include coverage for financial fraud. Oftentimes it'll be referred to as social engineering. Sometimes it's referred to as funds transfer fraud. There are other coverages as well, such as invoice manipulation. And essentially the coverage is for a financial loss that occurs because an insured was deceived into making a payment using a fraudulent instruction. The social engineering aspect really comes in through, for the example that Faisal used is a good example. Having an email come through that looks like it's official, that has a sense of urgency and is asking you to do something, quickly. Those are the types of phishing attempts that would qualify as a social engineering. You'll also see sometimes that, a phone call could be used. So sometimes, a fraudster might make a phone call. They'll determine who the right person is to ask, who handles, payments, or, who handles accounting. They'll make a call, they'll impersonate someone that they know is a client, and they'll provide a payment instruction that really leads to their accounts. So yeah, it's definitely something that's covered under cyber insurance, and it's also the most prevalent claim. In fact, last year, social engineering outpaced ransomware. So it's definitely a very prevalent threat.
And how does the crime policy potentially intersect with cyber, because they're so related to each other?
So crime is an entirely different policy. I would say it falls under like a management liability policy, but it is good to have both. So in my former life before joining IOA, I was a cyber claims adjuster, and I was also a cyber underwriter. And at my last place of employment, just before I was leaving, I believe maybe 2 weeks before leaving, there was a claim that actually involved social engineering. The policy did require a phone call to confirm transfer instructions before making a payment, and the claim was denied. The insured was not happy about that, but they had a crime policy, and the crime policy offered coverage for social engineering, and so they were able to get coverage for that loss. So it is good to have both of them. Sometimes it'll also increase the funds that are available, because I would say, you know, currently the cyber insurance market is withholding capacity a bit. And so you'll see that getting limits above 250, 250,000 could be a challenge. I would say certainly over 500,000, very much a challenge. In 2020, you might be able to get $1 million in coverage. So, coverages for social engineering are decreasing in the available limits. So having a crime policy helps to increase what's available.
So, Faisal, we have a question in the chat. It's about ransomware, and the question is it true that the demanded payment is now frequently cryptocurrency?
That is correct.
Okay, and so what do we do if we have a ransomware attack and they're requesting a cryptocurrency exchange? What are best practices there?
Right. So that's pretty common, Francisca. Basically, the reason they're asking for cryptocurrency is because they don't want to be exposed and give their bank account. Then we can trace it back, and then we can get them. So basically, what they do is they send the attacker, send like a cryptocurrency related transactional channel, and say that, hey, you have to pay us in cryptocurrency to be able to give you the decryption key so that you can have your files access back on time. So basically, at that time, the best thing to do is to immediately seek guidance from the law enforcement agencies. And these days, FBI and even international side like CIA and all these three-letter agencies, they come in, they get involved, and they look at all those hints and clues as to it's a typical like a criminal investigation process that takes place, actually, believe me or not. And well, the best thing to do for any companies, both big or medium or small, is that to back everything up at all time, right? You back up your files. So God forbid that you have been hacked through ransomware attack, and then you're not able to access those. What you do is, instead of compromise with them, you immediately record that particular machine. You wipe everything out, and then you're not going to lose anything because you have already have a backup available to restore from. So if you do an ongoing backup, and then you have a good restorage capability, then you can immediately bring your system back, not compromising with the attacker, and also work behind the scene with the law enforcement agencies to get to the bottom of this.
And I'll ask both Erica and Jeff, if your client has a ransomware attack, what should they do with their insurance? And feel free, Jeff, you can start, and then Erica chime in.
So any type of ransomware or any cyber related claim, they need to contact their insurance carrier immediately. You know, a lot of claims you can file through your broker. It doesn't need to be processed, by the minute. But when it comes to anything regarding cyber claims, we recommend that you call your carrier, get it filed, because every minute's important to get in there and see if they can stop the ransomware or what they can do to prevent from getting too deep into the system. So I definitely recommend is getting the carrier involved so they can bring in their expert team to get on it. You know, if they got to pay out the cryptocurrency or whatever they got to do, they'll get involved and bring in all the experts to handle that for you. And I know Erica could go a little deeper into that whole process on that.
Yeah, I was a cyber claims adjuster when the ransom demand was $10,000 in Bitcoin. So that was a while ago. And so, yeah,
Much higher
definitely.
now.
Yeah, much higher now. So yeah, definitely reach out to your insurance agent and also file that claim as soon as possible. It's important to file the claim as soon as possible so that you can ensure that expenses that you incur are approved for reimbursement. A lot of policies do have conditions which require prior approval before any vendor expenses incurred if those costs are to be reimbursed. So in the event of a ransomware, for example, when you call your insurance company, one of the first things that the claims adjuster is going to do is ask, do you have viable backups? It's a question that's always going to be asked because you're certainly going to want to try and, get your systems restored through backups. They'll also engage a breach attorney, an attorney that specializes in data security and privacy law. And they'll also engage a forensic IT company. That forensic IT company is going to ensure that you do not damage any forensic evidence that might help them to determine what happened during this ransomware, if any protected information was accessed, and the breach counsel works with them in order to provide a legally defensible recommendation regarding whether or not you have to pay, whether or not you have any statutory or regulatory notification obligations. And and the demand is generally going to be in cryptocurrency. I did have one cyber claim where they didn't request cryptocurrency, and it was, bizarre to everyone involved because they do want to obfuscate where those funds are going. And, back in the day, an insured had to go and get a Bitcoin wallet and go make that payment. But nowadays there are ransomware recovery firms, and, oftentimes even the forensic IT firm will be able to, negotiate to get that ransom demand down, and they'll engage the threat actor just in case there's something wrong with your backups. Even if you've got, perfect backups, there might be, one server that for whatever reason, isn't able to restore the data. And so you may need to pay some ransom, at least for that endpoint, to get the decryptor key. You will not, as an insured, you wouldn't have to get a Bitcoin wallet. And the insurance, as long as you're covered, is going to provide reimbursement. So those ransomware recovery firms and forensic IT firms, they'll take care of the cost. They'll facilitate the payment. They'll also test the decryptor to make sure there aren't any backdoors, so that when you install it, you're not further infecting your systems. So that's pretty much what will happen when you call your insurance company.
I mean, one thing to keep in mind, if I may, is that the timing is the key thing here. The delay you experience, the more ransomware demand comes through. Like it happened to many companies that we support. Like the first day they may ask, $100,000. The second day you haven't been able to decrypt or do anything on the restoring side, they ask for 500,000, and then it goes to $1 million. So it just never stops. So that's why, at least for a couple of companies that received a major damage, the first thing the insurance company asks, there are two things they ask. Who are the IT folks that are trying to protect or prevent this from happening? And then, is there any filing with the law enforcement agencies? Because, these things, like, they need to come in and also, kind of work with them this negotiation, and also in the back end from the technology side, all the backup files should be restored, and then we should pretty much stop that particular machine immediately. If you keep it running, it's going to penetrate over to not only your internal servers, it can also connect to all the external servers that particular machine is connected with, and those machines can be affected as well. So it's a chain fusion effect. So it's a pretty intense situation.
Wow.
It can arise.
It's mind-boggling, really. So how do we protect our companies from cyber threats? I mean, it sounds like it's a very multi-pronged approach. Let me ask this one of Jeff. Jeff, what do you see in some of your clients in terms of building an outsourced team to manage the various cyber threats that a company would see?
So that's a very good question, because that's something I run into a lot, is our clients just don't have the right team in place. A lot of them have outsourced IT, but their IT is not looking at their cybersecurity. And, that's why I always recommend to any clients that they start with a cyber assessment, which, as I was talking about earlier, is having that assessment done to really look under the hood and uncover what is really going on within the company. And are you doing the cyber training? Do you have MFA? Do you have it on all your computers? Sometimes we'll find that they have it on all the computers, but the owners or the C-level, and they're the ones that are hacked into the most, because they keep themselves open to that. So having a cyber assessment done is very important to get a where do we start, and let's start fixing those problems, is really what I recommend. And then also that looking at your IT team, also, like I have one I'm dealing with right now, one of my clients, long-term client, their outsourced IT has been telling them for years, you don't need cyber insurance, we have you covered, which, it's crazy to me. Finally, I got them to do an assessment, and they uncovered all these problems, and their IT guy was on the call, and their IT guy was like, oh, we could do that, we could do that, we can do this. And it's like, well, why weren't you proactively supporting the client and telling him, hey, we need to get this stuff in place before something happens? So I think if you're not getting that service from your IT department, you should definitely be looking at talking to someone else that can look at that for you also.
Mm-hmm.
So Technuf does a lot of technology assessments, Faisal. So what are like the top, how do you approach an assessment, and what are the big items that you're looking for to understand if a company is secure from cyber threats?
Sure. So basically, as Jeff said, we come in and do an overall assessment. So that kind of tells us the baseline as to what they have been doing to protect their both internal and external threats coming in to the network. Once we do that, the next thing to do is to come up with a vulnerability report to show the companies that these are the areas that you should really focus on, because I do see there's some vulnerability. The vulnerability report gives us, like, some of the common ones is basically, are you behind the firewall? I'm going a little bit too technical, I guess, but it's like everything needs to be accessed through the proper authentication scheme, if you will, without going into too much detail on the technology. And also your web filtering, like, we do go to online to do all kinds of work these days, and are we filtering out those malicious URLs that you're kind of clicking around, right? And then the other thing is that we come up with a remediation plan. Like, no company is 100% safe, right? And there are always some opportunities to protect even more. So we come up with a remediation plan and tell the customers that, hey, these are the steps that you need to follow immediately to make sure that you're not opening the doors for malware, ransomware, social engineering attack, and whatnot. The other thing which we always miss is that, let's say we have everything in place, right? We have been protecting our network. We're going through all kinds of technological advancement to the security side on our servers, networks, desktops, and laptops. However, are we practicing that. I mean, you know, we talk to, as part of our security assessment, we not only talk to IT because they're the experts, right? We talk to the accounting, we talk to the HR department, we talk to the marketing, or, you know, other departments that don't have anything to do with you know, technology, and it's very easy for them to inadvertently open up the door for the outsiders, right? So we interview all the departments and kind of, you know, go through that. Okay, now that you have that in your environment, do you really practice you know, what you have? I mean, do you change your password every 30, 60, 90 days? Do you have multi-factor authentication enabled, and so on? So that is extremely important. And another thing is the security awareness training. I mean, you know, we need to, it's a recurring thing, as Erica said, like, you know, it never stops, right? So the hackers are very intelligent. They come up with new ways, new ideas. So we have to be ready for protecting us by having some kind of a security awareness training every 3 months, 6 months, every quarter. And also we should do another thing, which is phishing campaign. We should do some drill, some simulated phishing email campaign for our you know, organization, to make sure that everybody knows what to do. They instead of clicking it, they pick up the phone and call their IT and make sure that that's the right email address, or it's the right link, and things like that. So you got to do all that.
We do a really great thing at our organization in that, you know, awareness is so important. And so we are constantly testing our team and sending phishing campaigns and giving them their scores. So, you know, we've got everybody 100% not clicking on the buttons, because it's important for everyone to be mindful all the time. So it's about socializing everyone in the organization to look for the key components of a potential campaign or social engineering campaign. And what we're seeing now, of course, is that a lot of companies are working hybrid models, or they're working 100% at home. So how do we ensure cybersecurity when we have folks that are accessing networks or internet from their home offices?
Should I answer that question?
Yes, that would be great.
I actually, would you be able to share, I put together a top 10 list of things to do when you work from home. I don't know if it's possible for someone to, yes, okay, good. So basically, remote work security best practices has become very important, because, you know, we tend to work on a hybrid model, although some companies tend to work from home 100% of the time. So it's very easy to have an oversight, or like unknowingly kind of opening the doors for our outside hackers, as I said. So every time there is any kind of like, you know, uncertain, or you don't recognize certain email address and they're asking you to do something, you need to click on that link, because what they do is they mask that name of that email address, pretending that it's coming from somebody you know. So if something is phishing, then you should really think about and kind of engage. If you click it, it'll show you the exact address, and you'll see there's a misspelled of 1 or 2 letters. And so that these are the things that, you know, you should immediately look at for email that you don't recognize. Social engineering, as Erica said, you know, you need to make sure that when you receive a phone call at home, or there's a smishing and vishing attack, there's another 2 terms that it comes through SMS event, or even some kind of a video clips that you receive, that, hey, this is a great video, you can't wait, this is a TikTok that, you know, you will learn a lot, you click it, and then boom, you have already opened it. Strong password, you know, that's always, you know, for our you know, convenience, we use the same password over and over again, month after month. So we should keep on changing our password every so often. And then our password policy should be strong enough to make sure it's alphanumeric and so on. And there should be a multi-factor authentication enabled in every you know, application that you go in. It should be a text sending you with a code, or email, and so on. The system updates, you know, all the patches that you receive that you need to upgrade, you know, as a non-IT person, you may not have to pay attention to, but your IT department should enforce that automatically all those patches are implemented, because some of those patches are coming from all those vulnerabilities to be taken care of. Physical security at home, there is no one to check whether you're locking your doors or you're keeping your intellectual property locked up and everything. So you need to make sure that you do the same practice as you do at work, to make sure, because you never know who is visiting your home. And also the web browsing that I talked about, make sure all the external and internal intranet or internet related applications, that you make sure that you don't click away things that you don't recognize. And one last thing is that it's a very common thing. At home, we get internet access from all kinds of providers, right? Verizon, AT&T, and whoever, and we get our router. And how many of us go in and go to the admin and change the password? Very few. They come in and set your home up with your internet, and then boom, you're so happy and excited that you start browsing away. But guess what? Those admin password is spread all over the world, not only in your locality. It's everywhere, right? So the manufacturer, everybody knows your password. So please make sure your home network admin password, you go in today and check whether you're using your admin one, and you please take your time. It takes about 30 seconds to change that password, so that you don't open the door.
I have to confess, our password is on a Post-it note on the refrigerator, so we probably need to do something about that.
Yes, please change it today, Francesca.
And also folks that are working from coffee shops or libraries,
Yep.
VPNs or
coffee shop or open network, you should use VPN to get into your system. You should not have it open, because it's the network is wide open to get others getting in. So that's something that you should look into. Yes.
Yeah, I had a client this year. They had an employee that was in Hawaii on vacation, and they were on their accounting team, and they went into a Wi-Fi in a Starbucks, and somebody got in through that and got in and started emailing them, and they changed the bank account information for an employee. So then that employee's checks start sending somewhere else, and they were out quite a bit of money. But they had insurance, and they covered it, thankfully, but they didn't have VPN in place.
Right. I mean, one thing about insurance, Jeff, everybody's insurance premium is going up because of this, incidents that's happening. So, insurance is good. We have it, but again, don't let, your premium go high by, being impacted with all those kind of attacks. So we need to take it very, very seriously.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, and we're particularly seeing this in California, we have some insurance challenges here. So Erica, do we have a lot of viable players in the marketplace right now that are offering cyber coverage? We're seeing a lot of shift in the availability of insurance, at least here in California.
Yeah, no, there are quite a lot of cyber insurance companies. A lot of the traditional I would say legacy carriers are offering cyber insurance and have very strong cyber insurance products. And there are constantly new insurtechs or managed general agency companies that are sort of writing policies on perhaps a traditional or legacy carrier's paper. Hope I'm not getting too insurance technical, but but I mean, the short answer is yes, there are a ton of options, and that's something that you should definitely work with your insurance agent. They'll be very qualified to advise you on not just what's available from an insurance agency's perspective, but also what best fits your needs, what limits are appropriate for your business, and why.
And so, Jeff, are we seeing clients declining to get cyber coverage, and what's the potential impact to a business on not having that insurance?
I think we're still seeing some companies that are saying they don't need it or they don't have the exposure, especially in like the construction industries and industries like that, more blue collar. But I think a lot of them, you know, it just takes from on my side, I try to be in touch with them and constantly remind them, hey, you should get this. You know, we had this claim with this client. You know, it's happening. You know, they're all getting those phishing attacks on their phones all the time. You know, their employees are getting them. You know, if I bring it up to them, they say, oh yeah, we almost had one recently, or this just happened. You know, it's not that they're not aware of it. A lot of them, I think they just don't, they think that the insurance is going to be expensive, and it's fairly inexpensive still at this point. I mean, it's been going up, but it's still fairly, for what you're getting, it's not going to be one of the most expensive policies that a company has. And it's, you know, not only just do they have it, have you reviewed the policy? Do you have the appropriate amount of funds transfer coverage? Do you have sublimit for social engineering or for ransomware because you don't have MFA in place? Because carriers do. I had one client I took over, they had a $25,000 sublimit on ransomware that they weren't aware of, and it's because they didn't have MFA in place. So they got that in place. Now they have full limits, better pricing. So having, you know, doing the assessment, getting everything in place that you need to have in place is going to get you more options, better pricing overall, higher limits. You know, we need to be looking at the limits too, because when you start looking at the stats of how much these claims are costing, $1 million typically isn't enough.
Right, and it's a lifesaver, as Jeff said. I mean, if I may give you like a real story, what happened is to one of our big customers, you know, without mentioning name, this is a multi-billion-dollar customer who provides different products to all of us in our household goods. And they have suppliers around the world like those, and some of the suppliers are mom and pop shop actually. So this multi-billion-dollar company has everything protected and secured. But what happens is when the suppliers, which is like, you know, maybe two-man company or 5 or 10-man company, supply their product through internet, like they said, okay, this is the purchase order, this is the invoicing, and then they are not protected, meaning those suppliers. What happened is their malware kind of penetrated to the big, you know, multi-billion-dollar company, the big hub. So again, it's a chain effect. So actually, everybody should have insurance, and everybody should take this precaution. And in this particular case, you know, there was it got very nasty, and then there was a lawsuit between the supplier and the vendor, and it's just, you know, insurance is the answer, and also you know, involved IT team, no matter how small you are, should be the answer to protect yourself.
I guess if I could just add anything from like an underwriting perspective, you know, certainly start with the risk assessment, know where you stand from a cybersecurity perspective. And then, you know, you've got to think about your business. You've got to make a business decision. You know, insurance is part of a risk management strategy. So, you know, you can't transfer all the risk. Some of it you do have to sort of, I guess, self-insure, if I could use that word a little bit improperly here. You know, it's important to, you know, implement the most important security controls and then have a roadmap, have a plan for what else you're going to be implementing down the road. And that roadmap can make the difference between getting an insurance policy or not from particular carriers, because carriers want to be able to insure as well. And so they're willing to work with you if you don't have everything in place, but you have a roadmap, and they can feel a sense of security with respect to your cybersecurity posture, your attitude towards cybersecurity, and the amount of risk that they're taking on writing that policy.
There's another question, which kind of goes back to one of the other slides from one of the attendees. It says, with the latest cyber attack in the public school system in Minneapolis, the FBI recommended not to pay the ransomware, which we've all read about the terrible consequences of that decision. Can we override that decision legally with our insurance carrier, or will the carrier defer to the governmental agency?
So I'll take that. So there are 2 states, South Carolina and I believe Florida, Those two states have laws that prohibit, public institutions from paying ransoms. From an insurance perspective, if the threat actor that's demanding this ransom, if they're not on an OFAC list, if they're not sanctioned, we would be able to provide coverage and pay the ransom. I think that the FBI is doing the right thing by advising not to pay the ransom. And, it makes sense. I understand there's a perspective that paying the ransom perpetuates the problem. However, there are times when not paying the ransom is, the difference between keeping your doors open or shutting your business down. It could also be the difference between getting back, information that is very, very critical for you to have, or preventing the release of information that would violate a number of privacy laws. I mean, just because there's a ransom, it does not necessarily mean that all of the protected information on your computer systems were accessed. Oftentimes, if you catch it quick enough, maybe they've just done reconnaissance to see what you have. They found it, they staged it, they put it somewhere so they can grab it later and exfiltrate it. But sometimes you catch them before they do that, and then you don't have to notify anyone because you haven't had any violations of any sort of data breach laws or privacy laws. So insurance companies will be able to pay a ransom as long as you meet all the other conditions for coverage, even if the federal government advises against it. I think the federal government also understands that ransoms are going to be paid when they need to be paid, and they're kind of being responsible and advising not to make that payment.
Very, very interesting. So I'll also ask this one of you, Erica. Are you seeing new legislative or privacy updates in the world that will be impacting clients and what they need to be aware of?
Yeah, there are. So every state in the United States has its own data breach law. This is a statute that's specific to that state, and it determines what you do if there is any unauthorized access to protected information that's in your care. So it's going to be different in every state. There are some initiatives trying to get a federal law passed that will sort of unify one procedure for every single state, and that probably won't happen. States like to control their own laws. But there's constantly emerging, privacy law. My state, Connecticut, we passed a law, I think just this year, if not last year, that protects customers. And this is on top of the data breach law, which also protects the data of consumers. Certainly, I think in this digital age, companies are collecting a lot of data. As much as possible, I would just encourage companies to only collect the minimum information that's needed and to protect that information. If you're storing it on your systems, if you're transacting it, encrypt it. There are some safe harbor laws in these data breach statutes that make it so that you don't have to provide notification if that information is encrypted and it's in digital form. So yeah, and lots of different states. I wish I had a list in front of me, but we do have quite a number of US states that have enacted privacy laws, and there are a lot that are still sort of going through legislation that haven't been passed yet. So I think that states are certainly responding to the threat to consumers. I think, a lot of consumers have begun to feel that their information is absolutely out there. It's not going to be protected anywhere it is. And legislators want to ensure that that's not the case and that businesses are being responsible with any of the data that's entrusted to them.
So, Faisal, given that, we have clients that are bound by HIPAA, or we have clients where we're working with payment and financial information. And so we take that data extra careful, seriously, and treat it that way.
Mhm.
From an approach, should we just look at all of our data like that, treat it as if it's, you know, precious and it needs to be as secure as possible, or are there layers for the way we approach the data security?
I mean, there are layers, but anything that has any kind of personal information like PII data or your intellectual property, you should not only have a backup, but you should have your own encryption methodology. Let's say your files are encrypted and then this ransomware attack happened and they got access to your file. Guess what? They won't be able to read it because you already encrypted it. So what you do is you immediately shut down that machine, you recore, and then ransomware attack is gone, you know, malware is gone, and then you restore from your backup and you're up and running. So basically you always have to think 5 things, right? You have to prepare for it, you have to prevent if anything were to happen, you have to be able to detect if something happens, and then you have to be able to do the remediation. You have to be ready. Your technology team has to be fully ready as if it's happening like immediately, and then you should remediate because timing is of essence here, and then finally recover. So, you know, prepare, prevent, detect, remediate, and recover should be our goal to protect any kind of intellectual property that we have.
And then Erica, so just collecting data from your website, for instance, depending on where that consumer is, there are different rules. So Europe has different rules than the United States. So what are the insurance company requirements, or what are best practices that you're seeing in the marketplace for that data collection?
So yeah, Europe has the GDPR, which protects, it's a very stringent law actually. If you are subject to GDPR, my recommendation would be to treat all of your data as if it's subject to GDPR. I would also recommend, you know, you asked the question, you know, I would say yes and yes. It's important to have that layered protection of that data. So you want to, you know, certainly inventory, classify. You want to make sure you're encrypting and that you're storing appropriately. Yes, certainly do consider which laws you're subject to, and then treat all your data as if it's subject to that law so that you're safe. And of course, I think probably the best advice I could give is consult with breach counsel. A data breach attorney will be able to consult with you and advise you on what data that you sort of interact with, how it's protected, what your requirements are, if you've got the appropriate controls in place. And most cyber insurance carriers will offer a 1-hour free consultation with breach counsel on their panel. And these are firms that are vetted. They've got extensive experience with insurance matters and privacy law. And they'll be able to help you understand what your requirements are with respect to the data that you're handling.
Will they also give you guidance on the size of policy or the limits that you should carry given your business activity and the type of data that you have?
So that's an interesting question because they might, but I would say that that question is probably better suited to be answered by your insurance agent. You know, I think there are times when we're, you know, all working together, and so I think an attorney would probably have quite a bit of experience to advise on the appropriate limits because they've handled numerous incidents and they've got their own benchmarking data on what the average costs are. So it's not necessarily unreliable, and certainly it's coming from an attorney. They'd be careful on how they provide that advice. But I'd also encourage to lean on your insurance agent that also has data on what other companies are purchasing, you know, in your same industry, in your same revenue bracket.
That actually has been very useful for my clients, is the benchmarking based on industry and activity to say, you know, for the size of the client and the activity that they're doing in the industry that they're doing it, what is kind of the standard? And IOA has a really great benchmarking tool that some of our clients have used, and it's been very useful just to understand, are we underinsured, and to rectify and manage risk in a different way. There's another very specific question on home routers and VPN. So with your home router, the question is, do you have to go through AT&T or Verizon or your provider to change your network password?
No, you don't actually. It's very simple. You know, when they installed the router, you know, they leave you guys with a kind of a pamphlet or some instructions as to how you can go into the admin page and update your password accordingly. So it's there. In case you can't find it because it may have happened a few years ago, you just give them a call today and then just say, hey, I need to be able to access the admin of my home router, and you know, let me know how I can set it up, and they can do it for you remotely. They don't have to even come to your home. So it's going to be very easy to do.
Awesome, thank you. I mean, those of us who are not tech savvy, these are very, very, very important data points. So, you know, there have been a ton of takeaways that I've gotten from this webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, I love Faisal, prepare, then prevent. Then if you detect something, you remedy it, and then you recover whatever's needed. Those are really good, the 5 steps of, you know, what we should be doing. Having a vulnerability assessment is an excellent way to begin to understand the areas that need to be addressed and prioritize them. You know, and it's a constantly ever evolving assessment. So I love that. Back up frequently. I heard that a few times today. And unplug, and if you're subject to an attack, you know, fast, be immediate, fast, get your machine off of all of those networks. All very, very good information. If you were all to leave the panelists with a few takeaways of your own that you would like to impart your wisdom on, what would they be? And I'll start with Erica, and then I'll go to Faisal, and then I'll go to Jeff.
Yeah, well, I would say, you know, again, cyber insurance is part of a risk management strategy, and it's a partnership. Your broker is here to help you and to advise you, and will certainly do everything they can to ensure that you're in the best position. And then, you know, do your due diligence. We didn't talk that much about supply chain risk, but, you know, we did recently have the MOVEit 0-day vulnerability, which impacted so many companies, and is going to continue to impact them as, you know, lawsuits start rolling in from the impacted individuals, or, you know, violated NDAs, you know, or intellectual property theft. Also, you know, collect the minimum amount of data needed and protect it. Also, of course, get to know your insurance agent and rely on them. I would say, as my final thought, to provide a little bit of insight from my underwriting days that I think could be helpful. You know, what Faisal mentioned, you know, a lot of underwriters are using the NIST framework in their underwriting, and they're looking to see that you're able to, from a, you know, perimeter or intrusion perspective, that you have tools in place to keep the bad guys out, that you can detect when the bad guys are on your network. And so something like EDR is helpful for that. Next generation AV is good for that. Then also, you know, sometimes if those tools fail and if the bad guys get in, they want to make sure that you've got appropriate access controls in place. So if they get in, we want to prevent them from escalating privileges, from moving laterally through the network, from any sort of deployment of malware propagating onto the entirety of your network. And then from that perspective, of course, you know, you'll want to have MFA throughout for all the privileged accounts. I can't tell you how strange it is that sometimes multi-billion-dollar organizations will have MFA everywhere except for privileged accounts, and I truly don't understand. But yes, of course, have that. And then should even that fail, that they'll be restricted. So segment your networks, keep good backups, an offline copy, an offsite copy, and then of course have a plan, because when everything hits the fan, you want to know what you're able to do, what you have permission to do, who you need to call, and who you need to involve. And so those would be my parting words. And of course, reach out to Jeff. He's an expert, and he's so great at what he does, and truly cares about his clients.
So maybe we'll pass it to Jeff next, since Erica teed you up so nicely.
Erica kind of covered everything. That was a good summary.
I know.
My key takeaway, and this is what I tell all my clients, is really cyber assessment. If you have, you should be having one done every year, just like you get your car looked at, you go to the doctor, have a cyber assessment completed. And through that assessment, you utilize your IT, your cybersecurity team to fill out your cyber insurance application, because we see so many times where people will say we do have MFA or we do have endpoint detection, things like that, that they don't have in place. So then if a claim happens, coverage can be denied. There have been some cases that have been denied. So you don't want to be in a situation where you're paying for insurance and you don't even have coverage when something happens. So have the assessment done, take the assessment, get the right coverage in place would be my takeaway.
Excellent.
And Dr. Faisal, we'll leave it to
Sure.
you.
So I know we're running out of time. In the next 60 seconds, if you could open up that particular sheet again, I just wanted to quickly give you some tips, our audience, as my takeaway for everybody and ourselves. That would be very helpful, I think. And I'll be very quick if you could bring it up. So if you scroll down, okay, so yeah, so this is the virtual secure meeting, right? I mean, if you go up a little bit, so we always have virtual meetings like right now we're having. So one little tidbit is that whenever you have meetings, you don't let everybody get in immediately, like without any passcode or anything. It could be a good practice that, we don't want our audience to go through some meeting ID and whatnot. So what you do is you don't let them getting in immediately. You just look who are coming in and then give them access. We don't do that, but we should, because you never know who from outside will have access to that particular link and they can easily get in. So that's one big thing that you should always think about. And then the other things, the top 10 tips, if you will, is basically, you never write down or share your password with anybody, right? Oftentimes we use the same password and share it around. You never do that. Don't click on links as I talked to you about from email or anything that you are in doubt. Use antivirus, use malware protection software. You should have firewall implemented. Don't send sensitive data over unencrypted channel. You never send any email over unencrypted open channels. Then disposing the data properly. When you don't need something like a hard copy, you should shred it, not just dump it to your dumpster, because there's a lot of interception happens that way. Don't run programs from untrusted sources, right? When you run an application, you need to make sure that it's from a trusted source. You lock your machine when you step away. Suppose you have a meeting in your office, you just step away for that, or you use the washroom without locking your machine. That's going to be even a good way for intruder to comes in. So you have to lock in, and then you have to properly secure your desk, your physical locations, and you have to encrypt the files that I talked about. Have strong and long password and change it incrementally. You need to verify the person or the website that you are communicating with. Make sure that they're trusted. And last but not least, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. 99 out of 100 times it is. So don't be alarmed and don't be too excited that, hey, you won $100,000 if you click on it and then you fall victimized. So Just remember all these little things, and then believe me, you have come like almost, to your secured world that you can cherish for the rest of your career.
Well, I have learned an enormous amount of things today, and some really good tips and tricks, and we'll be implementing some technical assessments at some of our clients. I want to give a big thank you to Erica, to Jeff, and to Dr. Faisal for joining us today. Again, we will be sending out this presentation and the one sheet on tips and tricks for all of you who attended. Please feel free to reach out to any of us that have presented here with additional questions, or if you have any insurance or cybersecurity risk assessment needs. Thank you so much for spending your morning with us. We really appreciate having you. And until the next time, have a good day. Take care.
Thank you.
Yes.